Okay, so cards on the table here. I had an idea in my head for a cheesy opening skit, right? Where it's various knockoff versions of me that are all claiming they're about to start reviewing the film, right? And they all just get like killed. But we don't got that James Gunn budget.
This is suicide.
Well, that's kind of our thing.
Don't you worry, eh? I want to get you out of here alive.
I'm going to get you out of here alive.
Oh my god, we've got a freaking kaiju up in this shit!
Uh-huh.
I don't wanna do.
So we have the Suicide Squad. Important distinction, why you may ask? Because this Suicide Squad is not the original Suicide Squad. There's a lot of questions going into this movie. Just to clear this up first, because not only do the general public not really know 100% unless they went out of their way to research it, but also even some of my friends didn't. This isn't a sequel, by the way. This isn't a sequel to the 2016 ? The Suicide Squad that had like Will Smith and the gang in that one. It's not a continuation necessarily of that. It's more of a reimagining of what was supposed to happen based off the original source material. So it's like, you can call it a remake if you want. It's just like a different take storyline, that comic book storyline, you know? So keep that in mind going in. I'll be honest, I'm a bit biased when it comes to this film because I've been following this since its inception, and since it was just in talks and casting, like way back when there were just talks of, of James Gunn like taking the reins on this. So I'm still trying to be like unbiased going through as a reviewer, but I can't help but I'm gonna be leaning more towards this, but I'm all over the place here. Should you see it? Is it good? What do you think? And if you go to the critics already, critics would agree that it's amazing. And it's funny because the first 20 reviews came out and it was like Suicide Squad 100%. And then a couple review critics were like, I don't think so. And it went down to 99 for a moment. And the marketing for it was like Suicide Squad 99% asterisk basically 100. So going into this, it's a little bit hard not to have kind of preconceived notions, especially because I'm a fan of the director's work. To clarify, since we always go from the top down, Suicide Squad is directed by James Gunn. If you do not know who this glorious man is, he has an extensive filmography dating back almost decades at this point, because he was a screenwriter in the 90s. But some films you would definitely know him from, like he directed Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's working on the third one now. And other films, might surprise you. But I mean, he's worked on a variety of films, both new, both old, but he has an extensive amount of experience in the film industry. And for the most part, his track record is great. He knows how to make an entertaining, great film, well directed. As you can tell, I don't call myself a fanboy, but I know that when I'm going to go see a movie directed by James Gunn, I'm probably, at the very least, going to enjoy it. I cannot do a cast breakdown because the cast in this movie is an enormous ensemble, and we got big name actors flying left and right. I'll put a group photo on the screen, but I mean, even if you live under a rock, some of these obviously, Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie, her, but Joel Kinnaman, Idris Elba, fucking Sylvester Stallone, just to name a few off the tippy top. But there's some that you'll recognize visually, some that you might not have ever heard of or seen before, but I knew a good majority of these people, and even the ones that aren't in the movie very long, there's big names. And here's the fun thing about that is, I guess we're gonna go right into the pros, huh? The cool thing I like about this movie is that there's actual stakes. The whole idea of the Suicide Squad, which I love this idea, and I felt like the original didn't do it well. If I could go back in time, people have asked me if there is any reviews I ever regret giving to previous films. I give the film a 3 out of 5. It wasn't bad. It wasn't fantastic. Like it's definitely not going to make my top 10 favorite films of this year. But it was. I feel if DC is wanting to up its game and wanting to make quality film and characters and get back to comic roots and back to what DC could be, this is hopefully and possibly a step in the right direction now. My review of the original Suicide Squad, I think I was a bit too generous with. I think I gave it, a 3 out of 5, when I think all things considered, it would have ended up somewhere closer to like a high 2 probably. But the idea of Suicide Squad, I just like it, where it's like you take like the F, like the C, D, now like the F tier list of like the rogues gallery of DC characters. No one's ever fucking heard of Polka Dot Man, like, unless you're an actual avid comic book reader, who's gonna know about him? And I mean, even most people don't even know about King Shark. Bloodsport, really? Like, no one's ever heard of Bloodsport. So it's nice to see that concept where it's like, okay, the idea is we get a bunch of these reprobates, and we have a very, very dangerous mission where we need people that have a skill set, but at the same time are extremely expendable and can operate outside of the usual legal limitations of government. So we're just gonna throw all these no names at the problem, and we'll probably get it done, maybe. But the concept is just I like it, and I like James Gunn's adaptation a lot more than the other one, because the other one had a core group and you focused on that, but I felt like there was like there's a disservice and injustice done to those characters, where they try to make it too serious and focus in the wrong areas. I don't want to get into a whole dissertation here, but this film knew exactly what it was, and it was like, you're going into it not for like a cheesy, like, oh, explosions and all this and ha ha ha, but like, no, this film was actually great. It was amazing. It was, again, I was not disappointed. It was just a fun, comedic, violent, just a bloody romp of a film that nothing ever felt too forced. It was entertaining. It was pretty hilarious in parts. The action was great. Like, going right into it, I guess. But yeah, like I said, incredibly fun and funny. I laughed out loud a lot in this movie. Almost every single joke stuck the landing for me. Nothing ever felt like too forced. The humor wasn't like too incredibly lowbrow. It was very well directed and just made in general. I got the privilege and the luck to see it in 4DX, so like the whole moving seeds, the fog, the wind, I had a feeling to be a good pick for a 4DX movie, and boy did that like help with the experience. Knocked it out of the park. It was great seeing this movie in 4DX. 100% recommended if you get a chance. And what's crazy about this is that for what the marketing shows you and for the type of movie that you're looking to get into, I really gave a shit about every character. Everybody from Polka Dot Man to like to Ratcatcher 2 to like Bloodsport, to everybody. Like it was well written enough where even if some characters weren't necessarily meant to be taken seriously, like you still kind of got a more or less like an idea of everyone's backstory. It wasn't forced. It wasn't always spoon-fed to you. There were moments where you kind of were able to pick up on it or be able to get a little bit of some character development and whatnot, and there was a surprising amount of heart to it. Especially, by the way, not any spoilers, but like Harley Quinn in this has some of the most character growth in the modern DC movies that I've seen. She went from being like, Harley Quinn has always been a very sexualized character, but like, it's nice to see how going from Suicide Squad to Birds of Prey and now going to The Suicide Squad, how we're seeing like it's less about the visual, it's less about any type of like, sexual appeal per se, and it's really about the character of Harley Quinn and her coming into her own. And not to say that she dominates the film, because she doesn't. I don't think she does. She has a few moments where you're like, wow, no, this is a different Harley than I've seen in previous films. Like, she's still true Harley, but I mean, there's like effort, there's care being put into like developing her, and it's nice to see that shit, especially in a fucking in an R-rated rogues gallery comedy. Like, who would have thought? so many films nowadays, it's hard to get invested because you know like what characters are probably going to make it and which ones are not. This film, no, no, none of that. You have no idea. Dude, anybody can bite it in this movie. That's the premise going in. I love a film and I love a show where there's stakes. Whether it's Game of Thrones, a movie like this, like true good horror films, and just any film where you're like, you know, it could be your main character. Like when a film or writer or whoever is not afraid to kill somebody to really impact the narrative, or in this case just to be like, yeah, no, this is how it happens, people die. Like, I like it, there's stakes, and I start getting anxious and nervous, and I'm like, oh fuck, is it going down? Like, for the most part, there's a few beats where I was like, oh, this was foreshadowed, it's probably gonna come around, but for the most part, I was kind of not knowing how the movie was gonna go. Trailers kind of show you and give you an idea, but honestly, the trailers did a very good job of not showing you like what actually happens, so I'm okay with that. This might be the guy in me, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a sexist comment, but the violence and destruction, I don't know what it is, man. I love James Gunn because he is not afraid. If you give him an R rating, he will take it and run with it. Not for the sake of it either. Like, yes, it's like this is a very violent film. This is a very gory film. But I never once thought, like when you're watching Saw and you're like, okay, I'm watching this guy get his gizzards melted out of him and watching his fingers get pulled off, all for the sake of some misguided attempt at providing them salvation. No, nothing like that. This is just like, oh, this is what happens when someone gets shot. Like, your face is gone. This is what happens when you blow someone's skull up, get crushed by falling debris, get a spear through your head, sorry, javelin, or like get melted or eaten alive. Like, it's just not afraid to like cut away from it. I just love how brutal it gets, man, where it's like a crashing chopper's gonna take some people out, you know, getting shot isn't just gonna be like ding, it's gonna be like splosh, and like, it's nice to see that. And James Gunn always delivers on a little bit of the ultra violence, and I love it. This was great. It was such fun violence. I would almost consider it better than Deadpool in that circumstance. Like, it was just fun. It's a super fun movie. If you don't like violence, you're probably not gonna like this. I'm not gonna lie. I would maybe skip this one. To all the characters that get the most screen time in this film, like, everybody I felt was, like, for the most part, well developed. Like, I knew enough about everybody to really get a solid grasp on their character. I got enough like little bits of backstory, lore, information to know who these people were, what their powers were, like how everything was like balanced out. And that's another big point. This film does a very good job of balancing out, because some of the people, like Polka Dot Man, actually have powers. Like Polka Dot Man, King Shark, they actually have like, you know, physical attributes or other, you know, otherworldly. And, you know, other people like Rick Flag or Peacemaker, they're just some just some muscly dudes with guns, basically. But through the narrative and through learning about everybody's characters and their quirks and all that, there's a good system of checks and balances where you never feel like power dynamic. When I'm watching a show, if you want to establish a certain character has a certain amount of power, then you got to keep that in check, and you can't like divert from that. And this film does a good job of like maintaining everybody's like, okay, what are they actually capable of versus what they, you know, do in the film and all this. And this film does a good job of balancing all that out for as many people as we have and as many moving pieces as we have involved. There's a lot of characters in this film. Technically, there are a lot. And there are some that do not get a lot of screen time. I kind of wish they got more screen time. I get it, and I love it. I still love it, and I get how it services the narrative and it adds to the shock value, the comedic effect. I love it, I support it. But if I had to pick a knit a pick, I would then say that that's something I just would have liked to have seen more involvement from them. But it works. Like, it's a double-edged sword, right? You know, like, you watch the movie, you'll see what I mean. And then the only other thing I could possibly say is overall, writing, very solid, but sometimes it gets borderline, almost a little bit too on the nose and cheesy, just almost on the precipice there. We start to slip on the side of that cliff, but movie manages to rein it back in, and even as bonkers as the movie gets, it still manages to kind of keep it keep it all in the family, so it wasn't a huge deal, just enough to be like, all right, cheeky, I see what you're doing, but let's get back to this. But yeah, that's about it. I don't have much negative to say about this film. I'm not gonna lie, as I was watching it, in my mind, I was like, oh, 5 out of 5, hands down. But after some conversations with some like-minded individuals, kind of like weighing some other reviews, trying to think about it and like give it its day in court like all the other films, it's not quite a 5 out of 5, but God, it's so close. This is almost a perfect film for me. And again, it might be because I'm biased. I tried to walk into this with an open mind, but I could not help but thoroughly enjoy this film. I loved it. I love this film. I love just about everything about it. I guess another con could be a couple characters are kind of like, even though everybody's playing a part and it's all based off of like a DC comic, there's a couple characters that very much were like, okay, this guy's almost like a live action cartoon. Can we bring it back in? Like one of the enemy generals, like I was like, he's a little bit out there. Could have, which is saying something because some of these characters are like already pretty bonkers, but I digress. It's not a huge detraction. And funny enough, I'm more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but I'll say this is I'll agree with the critics on this one. This is some of the best shit that DC's put out in years, and there's talks of Warner Brothers definitely realizing this and them as a complete conglomerate or whatever. They're like, yeah, we're gonna give James Gunn more films. We want to get more stuff from him because like I like to see more of this stuff. Marvel has definitely now, they've more than found their stride and they've been riding that wave for a while. Disney's fine, they're well off. DC needs some love, and DC's like the confused little brother who's trying to who has the makings of greatness in him but is trying to find his way in life. And I think if they do more films like this, then that path will be more achievable for them going forward. So overall, yeah, no spoilers. I don't want to give any spoilers. I would say, I would say go see this in theaters 100%. I might go see it again. I really enjoyed myself. If you are a fan of uncensored, profanity, and violence galore, but with a reason that services the plot. If you're not a fan of violence, okay, I don't know what to tell you. I like violence, but if you're a fan of that, and you're a fan of seeing all these kooky characters you've never heard of from the same universe as Batman and Superman and all that jazz, go up against insurmountable odds and all barely work together and serve it, that kind of oh you, but we're gonna get together and do it, then you're probably gonna love this movie. Even if you only like a couple characters in it, I think you'll still enjoy it, but it's not everyone's bag, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that aren't huge fans of superhero movies. I get that, so maybe steer clear of this one. I'd say as a film, it's great. As a film, it's very well written. Everything that happens in regard to this universe, it makes sense. The characters were great. It was shot well. Cinematography, music, the action, everything. It all worked. It was all very well executed by a man who has decades of experience in the industry. So I have no complaints. I say Suicide Squad is a high, very, very high 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5, ladies and gentlemen. Very high 4 out of 5. I almost gave it a 5. Almost. But there's just enough for me to doink, doink, doink for me to be okay, well, almost perfect. Not quite, but almost. Leaps and bounds better than the original Suicide Squad. I don't mean to hop on the bandwagon here. And I know some Suicide Squad purists are already kind of hating on this new one. But, they got cast members from the previous one. And if the cast members weren't on board with this, I doubt they would have signed on the dotted line, even with all that money, I'm sure that was involved. Come on. Everybody seemed to have much more fun in this one than it did in the last one anyways. So I think the Suicide Squad was fantastic, and I really hope that they either make a sequel, which they've left the possibility open, or at least do other films similar to it, same universe, maybe same characters. I would love to see more of what we could do with this universe, because this film shows you DC has the makings of greatness. They just need to stay on a path like this. I'm not saying every film they make going forward has to be like this, but it would really help if they get creative about it, give the right people the right tools, and then go forward from there. So overall, 100% recommended. check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you for watching. Like I said, high 4 out of 5. Couldn't recommend it more, but it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I get that. So thank you so much for watching. I try to keep these as vague as possible. I'm never sure which direction to go in or not, but I mean, I like to give just a moderate amount of detail and then kind of let you decide from there and just kind of tell you how the film worked as a whole. So if that's working, cool. If not, tell me what I should do differently. But anyway, stay tuned for the next review that I do. Goodbye. Tramp.